garden's just about done. We're still harvesting a few cucumbers and some late tomatoes and squashes and a late crop of corn or two, but we're getting to that point where we got a lot of bare ground and weeds are starting to take over. We got some purslane that's really starting to take over in the garden, and some amaranth and some other weeds that are really going to be pretty aggressive through the fall, and we'd like to keep those weeds down but also put some nutrient back into the soil. So what I'm going to teach you today is how to apply a cover crop to your garden. We're going to let that grow for 6 weeks or 2 months depending on what the weather does. We're going to let it grow up as high as we can get it, and then in the fall we're going to till that into our garden, put some organic matter and some nutrient back into the garden. We got a lot of different cover crops we can use. So this first one right here, this is buckwheat. Now the buckwheat's great for a cover crop. It grows really quickly. If you can get it tall enough, it'll bloom like crazy and the bees absolutely love it. Great pollen off of the buckwheat. So the buckwheat's good to grow if you've got part of your garden you don't want to use during the summer. You can grow buckwheat out there. It'll keep the weeds down. Bees will absolutely love it. And then when we till it back into the garden, it'll put a lot of organic matter and a lot of nutrient right back into your soil. Build your soil back up for next year. I'm going to apply buckwheat to this area as soon as we're done here. This is clover. Clover is great for fixing nitrogen, so it's going to actually fix nitrogen out of the air, put it into the root system, and then when you till it back in, it'll put nitrogen back into your soil as well as the organic matter of the clover. Clover's shorter, so it's not as much organic matter to put back in, but the nitrogen content's going to be great on the clover as well too. Vetch is excellent. Vetch is a legume, so it's really going to put nitrogen back into the soil. It's very viney, so it'll spread out all over the place. Lots of good organic material, but it's kind of a thick vine, so it's hard to incorporate back into the soil. And so the vetch, you don't want to let it grow too big or else it's difficult to get it incorporated and tilled back into the soil. So be aware of what's going on with the vetch. And then for something real easy and quick, just a little bit of annual rye works great. Annual rye will germinate quickly, it'll get established fast, and put a lot of good organic matter back into your garden and loosen that soil up. All this organic matter that we're going to grow from all these cover crops is really best for breaking up clay soils and loosening and lightening the soil back up. So every year if we can add organic matter back into our soil, whether it's leaves or grass clippings or a cover crop like these, it's always going to make your garden better the next year and put some nutrient value back into the soil as well too. So what I've done is I've put some buckwheat into my broadcast spreader. Broadcast spreader is the best way to do a large area of the garden. And a broadcast spreader like this works super easy, just slides over your shoulder. You've got total control of how fast you want the material to come out, depending on how fast you crank your hand. It doesn't matter how fast you walk, it depends on how fast you crank your hand. That's going to broadcast that nutrient, whether it's a fertilizer or a ground cover or whatever you're using with your broadcast spreader, it's going to broadcast that out nice and evenly. I've got control over my flow right here with this little lever, and so as I broadcast it over, I'm going to walk back here. We'll just do a little small section. You want to start rotating your hand before you open up the fertilizer spreader. Open up the spreader, the material starts coming out. We'll just do that section for right now, but let's put buckwheat fairly evenly over this whole section. You probably want about one seed every couple square inches, and as that starts to come up, it's really going to keep the weeds down, and hopefully we can get it about 4, maybe 6 inches tall before we're going to till this all in. And I'll cover the entire garden. If it doesn't rain, I'll put a sprinkler out here, get some moisture out here, get that to germinate in just a couple days. All of a sudden, instead of weeds coming up, we've got a nice cover crop. And the great thing about the cover crops is we incorporate those into the soil. They won't be back next year to take over just like weeds. As we incorporate that in, it'll take care of all those plants and put that nutrient back into the soil, and it's not a weed problem we have to deal with next year. So broadcast spreader, super easy to use. Got a lot of choices for you to use on cover crops, and get some organic matter and some nutrient back in your soil this fall so that you'll have a great garden next year.